Okay. Okay, so good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Happy June, by the way. Okay, so before we start, obviously I would like you to know that this discussion is recording, and welcome to our third Well-Read Book Club discussion. So today, Rania Sawalhi, Trista Holweg, Andrea Stringer, myself, Maria Caparu, and Emma Turner aim to discuss some key points and practical messages drawn from this incredibly well-written book, which attracts the attention from current leaders, practitioners, and I think anybody else who is, you know, an aspiring leader, somebody who aspires to get a leadership position. So we'll have the opportunity today to reflect on our personal journeys as well and discuss some key lessons learned from, from little learners. So on behalf of the team, I would like to welcome you all, and of course, welcome Emma, the author of this must-read book for all adult learners. Right, yes. So yeah, before we start, I think it would be good to do a little bit of introduction so that we know who we are, you know, and also hear how it all started. So a few years ago, well, a few months ago, probably a year ago already, and Rania, Trista, Andrea, and myself, we have had interesting discussions in various occasions, but mainly at the ICSI conference. I think it was in Marrakesh, if I'm not mistaken. And we thought it would be a good idea, you know, to give a different shape to our discussions. So the development of a book club appeared. So we're looking for ways to commit to a systematic reading habit beyond the academic readings, really. So we wanted to continue sharing ideas and exchanging our views on things. And why not, you know, gaining another perspective, a new perspective on things. So we thought that a book club was the way to go. So here we are, and we're all part of this Women Education Leadership Reading Group. Who would like to introduce ourselves first? Rania, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Maria. It actually started with one statement from Trista, Book Club me, Rania. So here we go with all these sessions, amazing sessions. So I'm Rania Sawalhi, currently work in Qatar University Honors Program. I used to work as a teacher, vice principal, different leadership roles, and I have PhD in education leadership with different volunteer and amazing contributions with lovely ladies like you and friends.
Thank you, Rania. Trista, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Trista Holwick. I'm in Ottawa in Canada, and thrilled to be part of this professional reading group. It's just so nice to connect with other women leaders and to think about work from other women authors, and to really reflect on my own journey, but also push forward on next steps and how to support other people. And so my work is in educational leadership. I've been teacher, vice principal, consultant, and leader, and did my PhD in mentoring and coaching and teacher induction. So I'm happy to be here, and I have three small ones, and looking forward to talking about it.
Thanks, Trista. And Andrea?
Hi, everyone. Andrea from Sydney, Australia. Currently doing my doctorate at the University of New South Wales, and also working as a coach for Growth Coaching International. I've coached in schools, and I'm also now coaching all around Australia. So it's really a great experience in facilitating training for coaches as well. So loving the books that we've been reading. Really, every time I read something, I bring it into my context and my experience. And so when I hear other people's experiences, it broadens my perspective. So I really appreciate all of you coming together every 2 months. And it's good to have a little bit of accountability to read a book that's not got to do with your doctorate or an article. So it's actually been really lovely. So thank you.
Fantastic, thanks. Okay, right. So it's Maria. I'm an academic member of staff at the University of Southampton in England. I did my PhD a couple of years ago, and it focused on instructional leadership in centralized and partially decentralized education systems. And my area of research, interest, and teaching is in education management and leadership, school improvement, and I have also had leadership roles in education organizations. And it might be worth mentioning that I also come from schools, from secondary schools. And what else? Yeah, I have also teaching experience in further education colleges, higher education in different parts of the world, from Greece, England, Middle East, Asia. So yeah, that's all for now.
Woman of the world.
It's
And
amazing.
now we've got,
It's
now
amazing.
we've got a,
It's amazing to be here with you and exchange ideas and reflect on things, really, and learning from each other. Really, it's one of the key benefits, really, of this book club, I think. Right, we are grateful.
I'm really,
sorry,
can we hear from Emma? Because
Yes.
I'd love to know a little bit from Emma, if that's okay.
I am about, yes, I was about to welcome Emma. So we are grateful to have the author of the book today with us. So I'm delighted to introduce you to Emma Turner, who is the author of this interesting book, Be More Toddler, a leadership education for our little learners. So Emma has got different roles in life, it seems. So an author, has been a primary teacher of 22 years with over a decade of school leadership experience as well, and a mom of 3 small children. So we welcome you, Emma. And I guess that all these roles are all very challenging, and we will have the opportunity to hear Emma's voice today. Emma, would you like to say anything at this point and probably introduce yourself as well?
Hello, first of all, and thank you for having me. I've genuinely never been on a call which encompasses so much of a globe all at the same time. It's a real treat, so thank you. I've not got a PhD, just going to put that out there. So I'm in awe of you ladies. As it says there, I'm actually now been teaching for 23 years, and I've done a number of roles, a number of leadership roles. I've done deputy headship, assistant headship, I've been a national strategy lead, and then, as it says on there, formed one of the UK's first all-female co-headships back in 2008-9, which kind of ran for about 8 years and which was completely different. Nobody had really done that before, so that's where a lot of the book came from, this idea of shared leadership and co-headship. And I currently work as a CPD and research lead for our Discovery Trust in Leicestershire, where we are involved heavily in flexible working. So we're one of the Department for Education's flexible working ambassador schools, which I lead on. I'm also a guest lecturer on our SKIP programme, and I write for TS, and I present a podcast with Tom Sherrington called Mind the Gap, which you might have seen. So lots of fingers in lots of different pies, all very enjoyable. All, like you said, the more you get involved with different people, the richer and the broader your experience. So I'm just really enjoying the education space at the moment. So thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks
impressive.
for being here with us.
Yeah, so impressive, Emma. I also liked when you called yourself chaos coordinator.
Yeah, I am a chaos coordinator at home. My 3 children are very bouncy, let's put it like that. I have got 3 Tiggers and no Eeyores. they're all very bouncy.
So it's a nice way to introduce yourself. You know, you have your own self-titles. Usually people would go with regional coordinator, you know, with CEO or something, but to have such a title, it's really impressive, really interesting.
I've even got a T-shirt with it on. I tweeted about it yesterday.
That's great. Okay. I'm not sure how many, I cannot see how many people we have here with us today. I'm not sure whether you want to do this global map allocation. So we always think that it's great to see on this global map where we're all located. So we can still use the Padlet. There is a link on the slide.
or the QR code, they can just use the QR code. Very, very popular in Australia with the COVID is all QR codes now.
So I put the Padlet link on the chat. so that we can add ourselves. So we will be able to see in a minute where we're all located. We have already said that, but in case we have some other people joining us.
Yeah, and I think also, Maria, whoever is watching this recorded session or discussion could also join us and add, just for us to know if they had watched this video later
fantastic. Oh, that's great. That's great. You see, I didn't
It's
know.
a little bit of a collection over the course of this, our book clubs, to see as we continue.
Brilliant. Okay.
And
Right.
Emma, I think you also took us or talked about yourself that most of your leadership roles were part-time leadership roles, right? During the book. So that's something we'll also reflect on.
Yeah, a lot of them are, not all of them were. And when I wrote my second book, Let's Talk About Flex, about flexible working, that's one of the things that I really wanted to point out, was that some of the leadership roles I did full-time and some of them I did part-time, and that actually we shouldn't necessarily see flexible working as always a part-time default, but that I've done kind of leadership with children, without children, full-time, part-time. It's been that whole kind of blend all the way through the career, but the bulk of it has been part-time. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. So it's incredible to see. I'm not sure whether we can see the global map again, whether this has been updated. I can't see that. Anyway, I think we'd better, start with some interesting review points for this book that we have all read. Here are some interesting review points for this book. It gives refreshing insight into the demanding, rewarding, and important role of educational leadership. Has got an incredibly engaging and entertaining style with important and practical messages. And Emma's voice is worth listening to. I wouldn't agree more with these comments. I find it myself like it is a very interesting read, engaging with the reader through a very inspiring way, really. So I found all the examples and the links made, between toddlers and leadership fascinating. So I found that those links and the how you call them, analogies, very, very interesting. I love the beautiful analogies made to parallel toddlers' actions with what leaders do or what leaders should do. So yeah, there are so many lessons that we can learn from the from toddlers, from early learners. What do you think? What about you folks? Any points that you would like to raise here?
Yeah, for me, I liked when within the foreword, I think Richard Gerber had mentioned that he wished he had written the book himself. So I think that was the same wish that oh my God, this is happening. Oh my God, I can just have a long list of all the examples that I can give either from my children or from the work examples. It's fascinating how you can reflect in the middle of the chaos, Emma, and see how those kind of examples you linked to leadership and to educational settings, teachers. And it's really encouraging for those who have young children, not only to feel that they are leaving other things or they don't have time for this and that, but it could be a very inspiring journey. I really loved it. Thank you.
Yep. Any other points before we start discussing about what stood out, for us from the text and what we have learned? Any other points that Andrea and Tristan?
Could I ask a global question to everyone? How many opportunities do women get to work part-time while they have children? Because I think
try again, Andrea. You froze there.
Sorry. I was just saying that sometimes women don't get the opportunity to go part-time. Sometimes they have to take the role full-time.
Andrea, that's the one you need to read. That's my other one. Let's talk about flex. I could give you the exact stats in the UK about how many do and how many don't.
That would be really interesting to hear.
Okay, so in the UK, 8.6% of men work flexibly in education compared to 13% in the wider world of work. And in the UK, 26.4% of women work flexibly within education compared to 42% outside education in the wider world of work. So education has a huge way to go to catch up with opportunities for part-time working outside education. There's a lot being done, but I think part of it is the historical narrative of one leader, one role, 100% of the time. And that's partly, I think, because that's what's happened forever. You know, that there hasn't been that shake-up of more than one person sharing the role. And until people actually kind of grab the bull by the horns and just do it, that narrative's not going to change. And when we set up the co-headship, we expected so much pushback, so much kickback against it. And actually there was very, very little, almost none. So there does need to be a complete flipping of the one leader, one role, 100% present, 100% of the time narrative. And the higher you set that, or the more responsibility within the role that you set that bar at for sharing leadership, the more likely it is to filter through your entire organisation. So one of the most powerful things that Claire and I did when we set up the co-headship was, by the time I left, 75% of our workforce was working flexibly, working part-time. And that was because we'd set that precedent at the most senior level in the school. So it's about making sure that within every organisation we're auditing who gets to work flexibly. Because and it's not just necessarily just for women as well, it's for anybody who has any other pull on their time, be that caring, be that caring for a child, be it parenting, be it
adult,
study, be it anything, you know, anybody who hasn't got the luxury of being able to work full time. And it is a luxury for a lot of people being able to work full time. Until we've kind of completely flipped that, then it's not going to change. The statistics will just bear out. And also we will lose, and it is predominantly women, to outside the education, because they get more opportunities to work part-time outside education than they get to work within education. So if you see it as a kind of a workforce talent issue as well, you've got the biggest demographic to leave teaching after retirees is women between the ages of 31 and 40. So just seeing them, take women out of it, just look at that. That's teachers who've been in post for probably about 10, 15 years. That is a massive amount of expertise, experience, skills, knowledge that we are just hemorrhaging. So we have to offer more part-time opportunities, more flexible opportunities within education to keep hold of that talent. Because I think it was you, Trista, said you worked in early career education and coach, where there are mentors that are leaving. There are experienced mentors that are leaving the profession. So who's going to coach the people who are coming in? So it's a huge issue that needs tackling.
And I think, interestingly, that COVID, sorry, Trista, that COVID had taught us that we can do this, because, you know, with the blended learning, with the different modes of ways of doing things, I think now we need to be more flexible and open-minded to accept different ways of doing things. Yes, Trista.
And I think that people have senior leaders have literally had a glimpse into people's homes as well, because so much has been done on Teams, on Zoom. They've literally seen the elderly relative or the child on the knee, or the, you know, the crazy dog that's very needy. You know, they've literally seen it, and also they've had to live it as well, because they've been locked down at home with their own responsibilities as well. So I think the pandemic has thrown everything we knew about education to the four corners of the universe and said there is nothing we can't change, nothing, because we had to. There is no aspect of our practice that we can't explore in terms of offering a different model. So I do think that the pandemic has offered an opportunity to reassess how we structure our workforce within education, definitely.
I love the idea of thinking about the pandemic as a catalyst for transformational change. You know, that's something we've talked about before in this group, and just the danger of us the quest for returning to the way it used to be, instead of taking and capitalizing on these opportunities. And what I wanted to say is that I think we forgot to mention, which is a driving piece, is that we all come from a women-ed relationship as well. So I know Rania works in Women at MENA, one of the co-founders. I'm starting up Women at Quebec with some colleagues, and this flexible working, part-time working is really critical to our discussion because it keeps coming up, this need. And I know personally that's why I left leadership of a school and went into leadership at a district. It gave a bit more flexibility, but that was something that I got out of the school as a result. So that really, it is an issue. And I guess my question is, it's so lovely that you met Claire and are able to work, but we don't always necessarily choose the people that we would be doing that part-time lead role, and that could have a whole nother kettle of fish depending on who you're sharing the role with, and are they in the same boat. And it sounds like you had a really symbiotic relationship, and I'm sure it was very, there are moments I'm sure that were challenging, but you work together, and that's what I was wondering, because sometimes our structure, so Canada can be, depending on the province, you move, and it's not your decision, you get moved. So you could be moving into different schools all the time. And that can be a problem when people think about flexibility. I think it's just like changing mindsets too, as you said, we need to do things differently.
And I think as well, changing how we view the work that needs to be done in schools as well. Because historically, especially in the UK, you have the head, you have the deputy head or assistant head, and you have a phase leader, and it's very structured. If you actually unpick the work that needs doing and assign that, you've got much more flexibility in terms of getting the work done, but offering a broader range of roles that fits the needs of your workforce and the contributions they can make to your organizations. So my particular role at the moment within my trust, this doesn't exist anywhere else. This was a body of work that needed doing by the trust that I work for. And so they created a new role. And I think that that's the way forward within education, is to start thinking about what actually needs doing and who can do it, rather than saying, this is the work, I'm going to shoehorn it into head teacher, vice principal, because those are historical models. They don't reflect the work that needs doing in our organizations today. Even 50 years ago, there was no computing lead or tech lead. That doesn't exist now. Whereas coordinating ed tech within an organization is a huge area of responsibility now that didn't exist back then. So there's nothing to say that ed tech coordinator has to be the assistant head or the head. That's a new role. So it's looking at what needs doing and who can do it and do it well, and carving up the work and sharing that out, rather than actually saying, here are the roles, let's shove the work into that and see who can fit. I think that's the other big flip that needs to come, is stop seeing this hierarchical set of job titles and trying to fit people into them, because a lot of the time as well, people's skill sets don't match perfectly.
Yeah,
you may be a brilliant classroom teacher and an amazing mentor with huge influence in your school, but you don't want to be in the senior leadership role because that takes you away from what you're good at. So
That's right.
It's looking at the work that needs doing, the skills of the people, and then making sure that you've got this kind of, you mentioned symbiosis between what they have to offer and contribute and what the needs of the organization are. That's the next big shift in thinking, is to stop trying to do what we've always done under the job titles we've always had. It's not helpful.
She's speaking our language.
But that's when you mentioned Women Ed, Claire and I have got our chapter in the Being 10% Brave.
Oh, good.
Well.
Oh, great.
We're chapter 2, coffee, cow pollen, co-headship. That's it. There you go.
Yeah, I think you're mentioning a very interesting point here, Emma. And from my own experience, I would say that in order to make effective change, happen, we need to make sure that we satisfy our colleagues' needs, our students' needs, the community needs, and so on and so forth. And one of the main challenges that I have faced as a leader in an organization is to persuade colleagues that this change needs to happen at a certain point of time. I mean, especially in centralized systems, change might be, well, it's more likely that it will be imposed by the Ministry of Education or the Department for Education or, you know, and education authorities and so on and so forth. And in some cases, the expectations are very unrealistic. And in some cases, the changes do not really, the proposed changes are not really satisfy the needs of the schools and so on and so forth. So, and this is one of the main reasons of resistance to change, really. So
I think that might take us back to the lessons that Emma had shared within the book, you know, about the chocolate. Let's start,
yeah,
or
exactly.
which lessons should we start with?
Exactly.
I liked about setting the vision and sticking to it. And when we enter a room, definitely we're going to notice that there's a toddler in there. And the importance of clarifying things, you know, when you want to do the change or when you're leading the organization, everyone need to notice what's happening and what's where they are heading to. And that made me smile, actually, Emma, because when I was during my maternity leave and my fifth child, when I went back to school, one of the parents told me that I knew that you're coming back because they were trying to fix few things as if that, you know, you used to tell them before. So during my maternity leave, they were fine. But when the staff knew that I'm going back, so everyone was just fixing, going. So I said, okay, I'm a toddler in a way. So
yeah, I think that we really overcomplicate the idea of vision and strategy. It's knowing where you're going. That's basically it. Do you know what you stand for? Do you know what you're not stand for? Do you know where you want to get to? And we spend hours and hours and hours in leadership discussions saying, oh, well, it's all about this, and, you know, culture is amorphous and this, that and the other.
It's got to be written a certain way.
Yes, exactly.
Right? How does it, you know?
Actually, will we stand for this? No. Well, then that's not something. Is this what we believe in? Yes. So let's do this. And then it's articulating that in such a way that your students understand it, your staff understand it, that it's not some ridiculously long-winded thing full of dense words. You just think, no, neither does it need to be some kind of awful, sparkly, strappy catch line. It's just like, this is what we're about. This is what we believe in. And it's so easy to get raveled up in thinking that's too difficult, when actually it's really straightforward. This is what I want for our kids. Now let's make it happen.
It's that KISS principle, isn't it? Keep it simple. And I think the clarity, really, having clarity and making sure that everybody is on board and it's very transparent about what is our agenda for this school or for our students, instead of, and do they get any buy-in? I think that's really important. Instead of the execs sitting in a room, you know, why don't we invite the teachers in and the students in, and what do they want for the community? So
yeah, interesting. You see, in my view, and basically, you know, I think all of us have done a lot of reading, you know, academic readings alongside other sources, really. And you know, vision is regarded as an essential component of leadership, right? And I remember when I was interviewing a principal in a low performing school in England, and I asked her about the vision for learning in that particular school, I was shocked because the principal said, well, I remember that it is stated in one of these documents, you know, in my bookcase, blah, blah, blah. If you want me, I can, you know, I can show you, I can find the document, I can find the folders, something along these lines, really. And I was like, I was shocked, you know, I was like, seriously? And obviously, one of the main differences between that particular school and other schools that I have visited was that I couldn't see the vision statement nowhere, you know, not on the notice board. It wasn't clear. It wasn't there, really, you know, I could sense it. So I think this is something that we all need to understand, because the organizational growth is associated with, you know, how we set the vision, the content of the vision, how it is written, as Andrea said. Yeah, and also we need to empower other people, you know, to be able to engage in the vision setting. It's not about you know, the leader setting the vision himself or herself. It's about bring some other people on board and empowering them to contribute to the design of the vision.
If they've not got that buy-in as well, you are actually making more work for yourself.
Absolutely.
Because every time they need to make a decision, they'll be coming to knock on your door to check it's right. If they understand where you're all going, then they can make those decisions for themselves. And unless you've articulated exactly what you want for the school and everybody understands it, every time they're trying to either plan a lesson or develop a unit of work or deal with a parent or answer a query, they're going to have to run it past you every single time because they're not sure about what to do. And that means you never get any work done because you're constantly answering the door to people. So that time spent setting that vision, articulating it, really understanding it and making sure everybody's on board with it and knows where you're going is never time wasted, ever. And we talk a lot of the training that I deliver about stop doing busy work. We do so much work in schools that's just busy work and it has absolutely no impact whatsoever. And there's a beautiful model from a David Weston book called Unleashing Great Teaching, which he calls the organizational edge. And he said, unless what you're doing has impact on the organizational edge, don't do it. And the organizational edge is the point at which you interact with the students, the families, or your communities. So unless you can say what I'm doing right now is going to impact on those people in that way, then what you're doing is just busy work.
Except sometimes we have other demands from above for some of that busy work, right? I mean, I'm like, yeah, that sounds absolutely great. I am not going to submit that document.
Should not be named. Yes.
I just wanted to comment on the sticking to it piece, and the consistency and defense. And what I was resonating for me as I was reading it is that there's also, in theory, I'm like, yes, okay, right. Core values, you got your vision, you got to stick to it in defense, but that is really hard sometimes when it comes in a collision course with people who have been at the school longer or have a different vision. And you're like working through trying to help create that shared values, shared understanding and buy-in, because we know in staffs, that's not always the case, right? So there's that kind of dynamic that happens. And to me, I really loved your your risk albatross component, and that we have to we carry these albatrosses with us and just to step forward. But the shifting it to think, yeah, if you really do have a clear vision and everybody understands your clear vision, then sometimes your response, which isn't always well received as a leader, if they can see that it comes in line with that vision, it makes it easier for those conversations. But those conversations are hard. And I was thinking a lot back to that time, as a younger leader, and how that felt to be like, no, I really this, and I'm like, yeah, no, I really think it's a good idea, rather than being a little bit more direct about it.
It's the whole toddler thing as well. If a toddler does not agree with something, they will tell you, and they don't really give a monkey's what you think.
I know.
I'm not saying we don't care about what we think about our colleagues, but they will absolutely stick resolutely to their guns and say, I know this is what I want. This is what we're trying to achieve. All right. And it's about having that confidence in what you are doing and separating that kind of personal awkwardness that you can feel sometimes because it's kind of personality based, and separating that from the kind of organizational work that needs doing, and actually saying, I know this conversation is really awkward because it's on a one-to-one, but actually in the bigger picture of what we're trying to achieve, we're actually trying to go this way. So I've got to do this awkward bit to be able to kind of go this way. But as teachers, we're constantly overthinking what we say to people as well. And we like to replay conversations that we have with people at least 20 times in the wee small hours. Did I say the right thing? What did they think? Oh my goodness, I've come across wrong. But yeah, it's channeling that kind of confidence that toddler has of, this is the right thing to do. This is where we're going. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm sticking to. I'm not being dissuaded. Doesn't mean you're not open to conversation and open to taking on other people's points of view. It just means
a dialogue.
Once you've set that course, that's where we're going. Unless there is a major flaw in it that you need to address. It's kind of the bumps in the road just need to are just that, you know, they
Yes,
are.
interesting, Emma, when you also discussed about building teams. It's dangerously interesting that teachers spend lots of energy about what they're doing, but they sometimes don't know that it might not be correct or it might not be effective. So when you're talking about they don't really want to do a bad job, but they don't have time to reflect and to see the practices, and as you had mentioned, not to make themselves busy instead of thinking of the right things and how to be done. Also, I liked when you mentioned imposter syndrome a lot. I think this is something, yeah, we need to highlight within teachers, because within women in general, that they might not be aware of the impact on their lives, their professional practices, etc.
Yeah, interesting. I also like sorry, Andrea, would you like to go first?
I was just going to say, I'm passionate about professional learning. And so when you said about that intellectual growth by adding to our knowledge, and you said relegating it just to one day or the holidays. I mean, teachers on the holidays, I know in America, when I was living in the US, all their summer was sort of, that's when they did a lot of their PD. But I know in Australia, we don't do that so much, but all weekend, if you look on Twitter, people are sharing articles and it's outside of school hours. So I would love for somebody to recognize and value the conversations, the time spent reading articles and then sharing and having a dialogue with other people and then reflecting on their practice as well. So I just don't think anybody who has the power, I would like to say, recognize the value of that, because I think if we keep relying on teachers just to do it out of goodwill and because they're passionate about it, that's why that burnout, I feel, in teaching is happening a lot. And I loved the way you said in leadership we need to model the well-being, because I think I used to have a principal who'd say, I'm leaving at 5 o'clock, you all need to leave at 5 o'clock, you've got to have a work-life balance. And she was very verbal about it, and her actions followed what she said. So, you know, her modeling that, that's the way I started education. So I've always had that in the back of my mind. Anybody else want to feel about that?
Oh, absolutely. This is one of the points I also like to discuss. And I liked Emma's example with the toddlers sharing their nightmares, and, you know, they have the ability to seek immediate support and guidance and reassurance, really. So interestingly, toddlers are not frightened, you know, to share this bad experience, which is the nightmare, and seeking support and so on and so forth. So I think we in organizations, we also need to realize, if we haven't realized, that people are the prime resource, really. So we need to do our very best to support staff development processes and so on and so forth. In most schools that I'm familiar with, I'm not sure what is happening in Australia or Qatar or Canada, the staff development processes with the aim to build capacity building is under the school improvement plan. So there's always some time set in the school improvement plan where the teachers will, you know, invest some time and energy for capacity building and so on and so forth through inset activities and some other professional development opportunities. But in university, for example, you see, at least in our department, developing capacity comes from formal training. So there is a plethora of opportunities there. So we can attend loads of training sessions on how to engage students, for example, when you teach remotely, and so on and so forth. But I'm really shocked because there is no, if you like, I mean, from my own experience in higher education, there is no formal coaching on mentoring in higher education. So we do a lot of, again, it's from my own experience. Some of us have a coach or a mentor informally, in most cases, to support us grow grow professionally, grow academically. So capacity building is certainly something that I think we should develop
reconsider
further.
and develop.
Yeah,
because it should be customized to everyone's experience. But also, Emma, within the questions that you had added after the sections, things to consider. It would just take a while to reflect on each one of them, especially when, for example, who would you go for support, or are we confident to that level? I think the reflection, that's something we really need to focus on with the teachers, educators, because sometimes we just jump into actions and we think that this is the best way of doing things instead of just sleeping on it, as you had mentioned within your chapter or within your section.
A couple of points I wanted to pick up on. One of them that you mentioned already about imposter syndrome, that's massively tied up with work-life balance for a start. Because if you can't get your job or work done because you're absolutely shattered and the job itself is too big, you're always going to feel like you're not doing a particularly good job. And unless you've got somebody as well modeling that you don't have to work in a particular way, I think, Andrea, you were talking about your head teacher leaving at 5 o'clock. Unless you're saying it's okay to work differently, again, you're always going to feel like you're falling short if you've got a culture of presenteeism at your work. So imposter syndrome, it's kind of multi-layered, and it's influenced by so many things, both kind of work-life balance and well-being, how your manager is managing your workload for you as well. Have they given you a job which is actually completely unmanageable? And also recognizing that when we start in a new role or a leadership role, that of course we don't know stuff, because if fill every single thing on that essentials and desirables job spec, then we've aimed too low because we can already do it. It's not like a huge kind of next step. Is in, and recognizing, like you said, Maria, in the toddler thing, is once you're in that new role, is to ask for help, and that it's not wrong
weakness.
to ask for help. It is right to ask for help. What's wrong is to pretend you can do it. That's really.
But don't you have to feel you have that trusting relationship for you to be vulnerable? So that checking in and checking up, that really like I was thinking about that. I thought that was a really great.
I've written that down too. Page 47.
Oh my gosh.
Page 47.
Yeah. Yes, and then it comes back in 501, right? The lack of autonomy, and I'm like, yes, this is exactly it, because some people feel micromanaged, like they need to be told. But then I think somebody said to me the other day, they went for a job interview, and I said, were you yourself? I said, you got to be yourself, because they know what they hired then, right? So you don't have to pretend to be or do smoke and mirrors, or so just be yourself. And when they employ you, they have got the authentic you. And so if you feel at any time that you're not living up to their expectation, that's on them, because they knew what they were getting with you and all in your CV and your conversation. So ask for help at that point. Don't worry about feeling vulnerable.
Yeah,
and there's so much help out there as well, and I have never ever asked for help from somebody and then turn around and go, you should have known that. Nobody's ever said that. They've always just said, yeah, of course I'll help you. Or if they can't help you, they go, right, I know somebody who can help you out with this. Here you go, or here's a pro forma, here's a link to the site. Nobody's to support our students. So if another professional comes to you and says, I need help, what they're really saying is, I need help to support my students. And if we are genuinely caring about the progress of the children in care, then actually we have a duty to support other people as well, and a duty to ask for help, because ultimately it's not about us. It's not about what we feel. It's about serving our children, our communities. And so if we're not asking for help and we're not supporting each other, then we're doing a massive disservice to the people who we're meant to be serving. So it is about asking for help. It is about seeking support, and it is kind of getting over yourself to be able to say, I need help, I need support. Nobody is the finished article.
Yeah,
but I'd like to just throw in something at that point. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Which is, I think there's an element of asking for help for sure, but that's not everybody's ability. you know, so I think especially when you're starting out, if you're new to it, like who do you go to? How do you, I could ask for help like every single minute of the day when I was like my first role, right? Like I was like, I don't know how to do any of this. So luckily I had a really supportive principal, but I have colleagues who are alone in a school. They're really small schools. They're far away from anybody. So it would mean like picking up a phone and calling all day, right? And to making sure that you create the community. So I'm thinking from a systemic point of view, we need to have structures in place that make it so that it's easy for people to support, because I think everyone doesn't want to bother another leader who they know is probably busy all day as well. And so there's this element of, you know, like, I don't know where to start to ask for help. So having these structures that we can make sure like people have a supportive like colleague. So you guide this person, I'm using the term accompaniment a lot. So you accompany this person during their first year, and then it kind of like releases that idea of, okay, it's okay to call, like that's my role, I'm here, and that's part of the built into the system, so that those people who aren't as confident maybe have just a checking, and so you know, and develops that relationship.
Yeah. There was a local authority new head teacher network, so all the new head teachers, so we kind of had we're all in the same place together. Then we had our performance manager, who was an experienced head of an outstanding school, who would come in and do our performance management, but she would say, just pick up the phone anytime. And the head teacher, experienced head, who also said to us, anything you want to ask me, just pick up the phone. But what I also wish I'd had back then was Twitter. I wish I'd been able to have that community, that online community of other educators. I wish I'd known about, you know, Women Ed. I wish it had been there, because there's such a wealth of opportunity. So it's having that trusted contact as well, but it's also reaching out into multiple networks. To make sure that you're getting that broad representation of the entire sector as well, because if you are only ever asking one person, you're only going to get one viewpoint. So it's balancing that kind of trusted relationship with the broader network overview.
And I think something also important, Emma, you mentioned page 133, it's about judgments. You know, if you work full time, they will say that she left her children. If you leave yours, you know, they will say something. So sometimes support is just, you know, leaving this kind of judgment or criticism that sometimes we just mention without paying attention on the impact, how it's going to be on individuals and their personalities.
And it's very interesting. I had a conversation with my mum the other day, and I talked about upping my days next year, because now all my children are at school, I've got the capacity to take on a little bit more. So I was talking to my mum, and I said, you know, I'm upping my days next academic year. She went, oh, you're not taking on too much, are you? And I said, are you going to go and ask Tom that? He works full time. Are you going to go and ask Tom if he's taking on too much, because he's got a full-time job? There's still so much kind of societal pressure as well, especially on women, about it doesn't matter if you work full-time, you work part-time, or you don't work at all. Whichever way you choose, you're going to be wrong. You know, it's just somebody is going
in somebody's eyes. Yeah,
in somebody's eyes, somebody's going to go, oh, I can't believe she does that. And it was interesting that even within my own family, with my mum, who, you know, I absolutely adore, has still got this mindset of, oh, you're not doing too much, are you? And I said, well, are you going to go and ask Tom? And she's like, well, no, because he's their father, you're their mother. I was like, oh, for goodness sake, Mum.
Well, and I think the pandemic has really shaken this and shaken, like, so we call it the she session, right? The recession for women, really, who's taking on the bulk of that childcare, kids being at home, whose job, who's giving up those times is really impacting, and what's going to happen. I'm very nervous about what's going to happen moving forward. You know, with a lot of the women.
Yeah, during this time of COVID and being in lockdown, I'm pleased my children were older, right? Because I'm thinking those young ones, if you had those young ones, Trista, you've had your children home for quite a bit.
Too long.
The beginning of the lockdown, mine were 3, 5 and 8. And it was hard. It was really, although stupidly, I thought, this is my moment. This is mummy teacher and mummy. This is going to be amazing. I'm going to smash this. I'm about 20.
And How did it go?
20 minutes in, I was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. I can't do it. I can't do it. But yeah, it was interesting. And what was interesting was then how we kind of navigated the whole pandemic and how the children learned and what I learned from them. So yeah, it was not the walk in the park, Julie Andrews type Mary Poppins thing I thought it was going to be. Far from it.
Interesting. I'm cautious of time, really. So what time is it?
10 minutes. We have 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes left. So would you like to move on to the last guiding question for us, which is what issues and emerge?
I suppose I'll start it was where we really began our conversation. And to me, it's that question of, and I loved what you were talking about, Emma, with like, we reframe the co-work and partnership. And so I'm really, well, how do we do this in our systems? So, you know, it's possible. Yeah.
I've got a similar question.
When we went for it, we literally just said, neither of us wants to do this on our own. Can we do this together? And our governors went, well, we'll give it a try. And we just went for it. But it's been really easy for us to not ask that question.
Yeah.
So the only way you start to make a change is to ask the question and start offering up an alternative and a solution, because everybody will just trundle on with the same old until somebody comes along and sticks a stick in the spokes and says, oh, you know, brings everybody up short and goes, you know, let's try this. And we were kind of the mindset that we will try and make it work to the best of our abilities. If it doesn't work, we'll hold our hands up and say, fair enough, it doesn't. But we were absolutely delighted that we got it to work. But we had everything from like the local authority at the payroll department didn't even have a drop-down menu that said co-head teacher on it. So every single thing, from how we got paid to what our employment contracts looked like to how we worked out who did parents' evenings and open, every little thing was a challenge. Just keep going with this. But it is about asking the question and throwing up the alternative, because unless we say, how about this? Or could you do that? Or what about that? Then everybody will just say, well, let's just carry on. So it's having the confidence to just ask the question to start off with. And
that's a head teacher. I even feel here in Australia, job sharing is just, it's not really a done thing here at all, even at that teaching level.
Do you know what, Andre? This is a really annoying thing for me, because the argument I always have about this is, you know, when people say, oh, it doesn't work to do this and that, you know, job sharing. I say, okay, so the majority of children in our country live in a household with more than one adult in it. You know, we don't say to those households where you've got more than one capable, competent adult, what would be better for your children if just one of you left, please? Because, you know, one person works better. We accept multiple adults educating and caring for children at home, yet we think something magical happens in a classroom. And
well, it's primary mainly, because the high school, they have, you know, 7 different teachers.
That was
so why is,
and in nursery, they have multiple adults in a room. They have multiple key workers in a nursery setting. And this is what I mean about when you actually throw the question out to people and say, where's the evidence? Where is the evidence that says one person is better for this age group? When you reflect that back against their nursery experience, against their high school experience, and against their lived experience at home.
There's your doctoral work there, Emma.
You will be surprised. Sorry. You'll be surprised, because in Arab countries, we don't have the same system that you have. So we don't have classroom teachers. You will also have 7 teachers teaching the students in primary, for example, year 3, 4, 5, 6. So even this, it could be an evidence, you know, like other countries are not doing this. But similarly, you know, the concept of sharing and suggesting new ideas, being open for support and having this kind of trust environment, I think this is something in every culture, in every country, need to reconsider and need to replan, especially from every single person. Don't expect that it's fine and they are managing. No, we all need support, and we all need different ways of encouraging others and accepting them the way that they are trying according to their own environment, culture, and don't just keep a kind of a ruler expecting everyone just to do the same. It's not the case.
And it's
And also,
the toddler thing. A toddler's favorite question is why, why? And that's what we need to ask in education is, well, why can't it work? But why? And we don't ask that. We just go, oh, okay. And when we need to be more toddler in asking those why questions if we're going to change anything, because otherwise we're just kind of rolling over it and accepting that that's how it's always.
That's the thing, that in some cases we're used to accept the status quo, but leadership is not about accepting, it's about challenging how things work. And by asking these why questions means that we are open to challenge ourselves, challenge our practices, with the aim of developing further and hopefully making some better decisions for to improve the school and so forth.
I
Yes.
think, Emma, we also need to encourage early career teachers or young mothers also to share their insights, learning from everyone around them, even the new experience that they're having. So this is a wonderful book that it's not only encouraging those teachers with young children, but also encouraging everyone to accept those new ways of learning and professional development.
Oh, so funny that your last one's got like that unicorn on there.
This
Joyous
is Maria's
unicorn.
toy.
Yeah, because it sits alongside the 4 horsemen of the leadership apocalypse, which is...
I think there is no better way, really to conclude this discussion and summarize the discussion, I think, than highlighting this one. This is one of my favorite points that you have made in your book. So I loved it. We need to find our chocolate buttons and what's the other one? Yeah, and the lollipops as well.
Just thinking, if you haven't read the book, that quote is...
I know.
There's a narrative that leads up to this. It's just not me plucking random things.
Well, it is a good motivation for people who haven't read the book to read the book to find out more what
People
we're
will
talking.
become curious, right?
Yeah.
People will be curious.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even the title of the book is very eye-catching. When I first started reading this book, I thought, well, what can I learn from a toddler? But the more I was reading, the more I was engaging with this writing, the more I realized that, well, yeah, this is what I'm doing, or this is what I should do, really. So I really love these, I call them analogies, like even the car analogy, the supermarket analogy.
The lifeguard analogy. I love that one.
And that's, on the front, the tiger's my little boy. That's him in his...
Is it?
Yeah.
Ah,
He had a tiger outfit, and it's actually a photograph of him.
beautiful.
He was in the centre of town, dressed as a tiger at the traffic lights, and I'd snapped a photograph of him from behind. And when we published the book, they said, what sort of thing do you want on the front? I said, like a toddler dressed up and not really caring about anything, a bit like this photograph. And they actually used the line drawing of the photograph. So that's an exact picture of my little boy on the front.
Wow,
nice.
thanks for sharing. That's amazing.
I think we should. I think the more we realize that it would be good for all of us to do the extra mile, the better it will be. So that's for one more time. This was a good reminder for myself. Every time you've got a chance to do the extra mile, just go for it. No time to regret, and there is no reason to regret, really. Anyway, okay, yes. Thanks, Rania, for clicking the next one. So that was a very interesting, discussion, and this dynamic of colleagues sharing, and discussing about your book, Emma, was really interesting, was really good. And in my view, reading is no longer an activity in isolation, given that, we have created this platform to discuss and share experience and, reflect on what we read. And we're privileged today that we have had the opportunity to discuss our thoughts with you, Emma, in a friendly and, collegial environment. So those of you who'd like to connect with us through Twitter, here are the details on the right hand side of the slides. And in the next book club meeting, we will discuss, let me find it, burnout, the secret to unlocking to stress cycle. Yeah, sorry, I haven't bought that book yet, but I will do. So, right, thanks everybody for joining, and huge thanks to Emma, who was with us here today. Anyone else from anything else from Trista, Andrea, or Rania? Anything else to say?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emma, for sharing your insight. It's great to talk with you, to see your words come alive and your thinking behind it. I really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.
It's an absolute delight. What a lovely way to spend the morning. So thank you.
Yeah.
And to start the month, finally we're in June. So thank you much for your inspiring insights. And we're just encouraging everyone who didn't read the book. It's an amazing book for you to reflect. And I expect that everyone will start having kind of stories from our children, even from our childhood. So let's share it and see what kind of insights and lessons we learn. Thank you, Emma. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Emma. Thanks, Maria, for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.